They called me a drifter the night my mother lay dying in a Raleigh hospital, her breaths shallow, her hand frail in mine. They said I was chasing shadows, that I couldn't hold a steady job, as if I hadn't spent years pulling wounded soldiers from the chaos of war zones half a world away. My family didn't know where I'd been, what I'd done, or who I'd become. That didn't stop them from laughing over their pot roast and green beans, their voices sharp in the hospital cafeteria. "You look worn out, Abby," my sister-in-law, Lauren, said, her smile thin as a blade. "What do you even do these days?" My father, Colonel Robert Hayes, didn't look up from his plate. "Probably guarding a strip mall," he muttered. My hands trembled under the table, not from shame, but from holding back. They had no idea. Then a voice boomed over the hospital intercom, crisp and commanding. "Clear the way for Major General Morgan." Repeat, "Clear the way for Major General Morgan." The room froze. Forks clattered. My niece Sophie stared, her juice glass tipping. My brother Ethan whispered, "What the hell?" I stood, my combat boots echoing on the tile floor. Every uniformed officer in the cafeteria turned and saluted. My name tag, Morgan, glinted under the fluorescent lights, my ribbons catching the glow. They called me a failure, but the world had already seen me. Now, my family had no choice but to see me too. My name is Abigail Morgan, Abby to those who thought they knew me. And for years, I let them call me a disappointment because it was easier than explaining the truth. But not anymore. Before I share my story, I want to know you're here with me. Just say listening in the comments, or tell me where you are. I love hearing how far these stories travel. If you believe stories like mine deserve to be heard, show your support. Sometimes the smallest gesture is the loudest justice. Thank you. Here's my story. The Raleigh summer pressed against me like a heavy coat as I pulled my old pickup into the hospital parking lot. Tires crunching on asphalt, worn by years of comings and goings. The American flag outside WakeMed fluttered, just as it had in our family home when I was a kid, back when my father's daily salutes were my measure of duty. That flag had seen me leave at 20, after I walked away from West Point. My father's dream for me shattered in a shouting match over his oak desk. "You're throwing away our legacy," he'd roared, his face red, his medals glinting on the wall. I left with a backpack and a choice I couldn't undo. Not to abandon the fight, but to join one the Army doesn't advertise. Now, 8 years later, I was back, not for reconciliation, but because Mom's cancer had spread, and time was slipping away. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and grief. The corridors too bright, the air too still. I found my family in the cafeteria, gathered for a tense dinner between Mom's treatments. Ethan, my brother, stood out in his navy dress blues, his lieutenant commander insignia polished to a shine. Lauren, his fiancée, a defense contractor with a sharp tongue and sharper ambitions, clung to his arm. Her smile calculated. Relatives I hadn't seen in years milled around, their voices loud, their glances fleeting. Mom, frail but composed, sat at the table's head, her scarf hiding the hair she'd lost. "Abby, you didn't say you'd be here," she said, her voice thin but warm. Dad's eyes skimmed my faded jacket and scuffed boots, his grunt dismissive. "Late as usual," he said, turning back to Ethan's story about a naval exercise in Norfolk. I stood by the coffee station, clutching a styrofoam cup I didn't drink from, feeling like an outsider in my own family. No one asked where I'd been. They assumed security guard, maybe, or some dead-end job. Lauren's voice cut through the chatter, bright and biting. "Abby, still finding yourself? What was it, some nonprofit gig?" Her laugh wasn't mean, just careless, like I was a footnote not worth reading. Ethan smirked, adding, "She's probably driving a forklift somewhere." The table chuckled, and I felt the old wound reopen, not because they were right, but because they didn't care to be wrong. That night, I slept in a motel off I-40, the neon sign flickering outside my window. I couldn't face the guest room in my parents' Cary home. now Lauren's wedding planning hub, with fabric swatches and seating charts covering my old desk. On the motel bed, I opened a metal case I'd carried for years. Inside was a photo of me at West Point, 19, standing beside Dad, both of us smiling, believing in a future that no longer existed. I'd been that girl once, full of ideals about honor. But after Kabul, after missions that left blood on my hands and ghosts in my dreams, I wasn't her anymore. I closed the case, the weight of it grounding me. They could call me a drifter, but I'd carried wars they'd never understand. Ethan's promotion ceremony was the next day at Fort Bragg. A last-minute invite texted by Mom. If you're free, it's at 2 p.m., no pressure. It felt like an afterthought, but duty pulled me there. I arrived in a plain gray coat, slipping into the back of the auditorium, invisible among the dress uniforms and proud families. Ethan stood on stage, his new commander rank gleaming, my parents beaming in the front row. I planned to leave unnoticed, just another shadow. Then a voice broke through the applause. "Major General Morgan, didn't expect you here." It was General David Kessler, my old CO, his stars shining on his shoulders. He saluted, crisp and deliberate, the kind you give someone who's earned it in fire. I returned it, my heart pounding. The room hushed. Heads turned. Lauren's wineglass slipped, shattering on the floor. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad stared, his face pale, like he'd seen a specter. Ethan's jaw tightened, his eyes meeting mine for the first time in years. Kessler stepped closer, his voice low. "Didn't think I'd see the Shadow Blade outside a war zone." A young captain nearby whispered, "She's Shadow Blade? That's real?" Another murmured, "I thought that was a classified legend." I nodded to Kessler, shook his hand, and walked out, my boots steady on the polished floor. The weight of their stares followed me, but I didn't look back. That night, I sat alone at a dive bar near Fort Bragg, a whiskey untouched in front of me. My phone buzzed with a message from Kessler. "You can't stay hidden, Morgan. They need to know who you are. For the team." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. I'd spent years in the shadows, letting my family's assumptions bury me. But shadows don't get saluted. Generals do. Back at the motel, the neon hum kept me company as I powered up my secure laptop. Logging into a covert intelligence network I hadn't touched in months. What I found stopped my breath. A data breach, my name all over it. Mission logs from Operation Shadowblade, a 2015 campaign in Syria where we'd disrupted a bioweapons ring. Satellite images, audio transcripts, my team's movements, all unredacted. The trail led to a civilian email. Lauren Pierce. My brother's fiancé, the defense contractor who'd mocked me over dinner, had received classified files from a ghost, Michael Crane, a former analyst on Shadowblade, discharged for ethics violations. The subject line read, "Gender Policy Research." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a leak. It was a betrayal, and my family was tangled in it. I drove to Ethan and Lauren's condo in downtown Raleigh, fury burning through me. Lauren opened the door, her face pale, her uniform still on. "Abby, I didn't know," she stammered. "I thought it was clear data for a policy brief." I stepped inside, my voice low. "You didn't know you were reading classified ops? You put my team at risk." Her eyes filled with tears. "They suspended me this morning. Michael said it was legal, I swear." I leaned closer. "Swearing doesn't undo damage. Lives are on the line." She sank onto the couch, hands shaking. "I didn't mean for this." I didn't soften. Intent doesn't erase consequences. The leak's timing was catastrophic. A Senate committee was debating women in combat roles, led by Senator Patricia Holt, a vocal critic of female operatives. My name, tied to Shadowblade, was now ammunition in her campaign. I left Lauren's condo, the night air sharp against my skin. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the soldiers I'd led, the civilians we'd protected, and the truth we'd fought for. The war had followed me home, and I wasn't running. A Raleigh night was thick with humidity as I left Ethan and Lauren's condo, my heart pounding with a fury I hadn't felt since Syria. Lauren's tearful excuses that she thought the classified Shadowblade files were cleared for a policy brief rang hollow. Those files, sent by Michael Crane, a disgraced analyst from my 2015 operation, held details of missions that saved lives but left scars, missions the Army swore would stay buried. Now they were in the hands of a Senate committee led by Senator Patricia Holt, who wanted women like me out of combat roles. My family's dismissal at that hospital dinner, calling me a drifter while Mom lay dying, had hurt. But this betrayal cut deeper. Lauren, Ethan's fiancée, wasn't just complicit. She was a link in a chain that could endanger my team and the civilians we protected. I drove back to my motel off I-40, the neon sign flickering like a warning. The room smelled of stale coffee and regret, but I didn't have time for either. I powered up my secure laptop, the glow casting shadows across the peeling wallpaper. Logging into the covert intelligence network, I dug deeper into the breach. The files weren't just leaked. They'd been altered, timestamps manipulated by AI to make Shadowblade look like a rogue omp. My name was plastered across every page, a target for Holt's crusade. I traced the email chain from Crane to Lauren, then to a third party, a shadow account tied to a defense consulting firm, Vanguard Solutions, known for lobbying against progressive military policies. The pieces were falling into place, and they pointed to a bigger threat. My phone buzzed with a message from Colonel David Kessler, my old CO. "Morgan, you can't stay silent. The leak's gone viral on X. Blogs are calling Shadowblade a myth turned scandal. Find Crane. Shut this down." I stared at the screen, my pulse steady despite the storm inside. For years, I'd let my family's assumptions that I was a failure, a nobody, cloak me. It was easier than explaining covert ops that didn't exist on paper. But now, the shadows I'd lived in were being weaponized. I needed answers, and I needed them from the one person who'd always stood by me, even when I walked away from West Point. I drove to my parents' house in Cary, the American flag still swaying on their porch. Mom was too weak to leave the hospital, but Dad was home, his study lit by a single lamp. Colonel Robert Hayes, retired, sat behind his desk, his medals framed on the wall like a silent jury. He looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Abby, it's late." I didn't sit. "We need to talk about Ethan and Lauren." His face hardened. "What's this about?" I laid it out. The leaked files, Lauren's involvement, the AI-altered logs now fueling Holt's Senate campaign. His jaw tightened. But he didn't interrupt. "Ethan knew," I said, my voice low. "He didn't tell me about Lauren's research because he thought I was irrelevant. You all did." Dad's eyes dropped to his desk. "We didn't know, Abby. You never told us." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "I didn't tell you because you never asked. You called me a drifter while I was leading ops that saved lives." He flinched, but I pressed on. "Lauren's in deep, Dad. She's suspended, and those files could get my team killed." He stood, his voice shaking. "Ethan wouldn't betray you." I slid a printout across his desk. Emails between Lauren and Ethan, discussing the policy data she'd received. Ethan's response: "Don't tell Abby. She'll overreact." Dad's hands trembled as he read. "He thought he was protecting you," he said weakly. "Protecting me?" I snapped. "He protected his career and his fiancée's ambitions. Now I'm cleaning up their mess." I left him staring at the papers, the weight of his silence heavier than ever. Back at the motel, I got a call from Emma, my niece, her voice small but fierce. "Aunt Abby, I saw Dad's ex posts. He's saying you're stirring up trouble. What's going on?" I hesitated, then told her the truth. About Shadowblade, the leak, Lauren's role. Emma was quiet, then said, "I'm coming to Raleigh tomorrow. I want to help." I smiled despite myself. She had my stubbornness, and I needed an ally. The next day, Emma met me at a coffee shop near NC State. Her law school textbooks piled beside her. "I dug into Vanguard Solutions," she said, sliding a tablet across the table. "Their CEO, Richard Holt, Senator Holt's brother, has been funding anti-reform lobbies for years. Lauren worked for them before Ethan proposed. My stomach twisted. The leak wasn't just personal. It was political. A calculated move to discredit women in combat and bury Shadowblade's legacy. Emma's eyes met mine. What do we do? I leaned forward. We find Crane. He's the source. She nodded, pulling up a database from her internship at a legal aid clinic. I've got access to contractor records. I'll track his last known address. Her determination reminded me of myself at 25, before the war carved me into something else. That evening, Kessler sent an encrypted message. Morgan, new intel, Crane's in D.C., working with a broker tied to Holt. You're reinstated, temporary assignment, Operation Iron Pulse. Target, a cyber terror cell in Yemen using Shadowblade's stolen code for an attack on U.S. embassies. My old injury, a shoulder scar from Kabul, throbbed as I read. The code they'd stolen was mine, a signal scrambler I'd designed for Shadowblade. Crane had access before he was discharged for fraud. Now, he was selling it to the highest bidder. Then, I met Emma again the next morning, her face pale but resolute. Crane's last known address was a DC apartment, but he's gone dark. I found a burner phone linked to him, though. She handed me a slip with a number. You're good, I said, impressed. She grinned. Learned from the best. I called Lauren, arranging to meet at her office in Raleigh's Research Triangle. She was a mess, her eyes red, her desk cluttered with legal notices. Abby, they're auditing my contracts, she said. Voice breaking. I didn't know Crane's files were classified. I slid the burner phone number across her desk. Prove it. Track him through this. You owe me. She hesitated, then nodded. I'll do it. Not just for you, for Ethan. I didn't trust her, but I needed her access. As I left, my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Stop dragging Lauren into your drama. You're tearing us apart. I didn't reply. He'd made his choice, just like I'd made mine. The hospital called that afternoon. Mom's condition was worsening. I sat by her bed, her hand cold in mine. She squeezed weakly, her voice a whisper. I saw you on the news, Abby. Major General, why didn't you tell us? Tears stung my eyes. I thought you wouldn't believe me. She smiled, faint but real. I always knew you were more than they said. Her words were a lifeline, but the clock was ticking. Back at the motel, Lauren texted, found Crane. He's meeting a contact in Diesel tomorrow, near the Pentagon. Coordinates attached. I forwarded them to Kessler, who confirmed. Iron Pulse is greenlit. You lead the ground team. Cyber units ready. The mission was clear. Stop Crane. Secure the stolen code. Neutralize the Yemen cell. But a new twist hit. Ex-posts linked to Vanguard Solutions were spreading doctored Shadowblade footage, painting me as a reckless operative. A narrative was shifting, and Holt's committee was gaining traction. I called Emma. Keep digging into Vanguard. Find their funding. She agreed, her voice steady. We're in this together, Aunt Abby. The next day, I confronted Ethan at his condo, Lauren absent. He stood rigid, his navy blues pristine. You're ruining everything, he said. Lauren's career, my promotion, our family. I stepped closer. You knew about the files, Ethan. You let Lauren use me as a pawn. His face fell, guilt flickering. I thought it was just data. I didn't know. I cut him off. You didn't ask. You assumed I was nothing, like Dad did. He looked away, silent. I left, my boots heavy on the hardwood. The war wasn't just in Yemen. It was here, in the silences between us. As I prepared for Iron Pulse, Kessler sent one last message. Crane's contact is tied to Holt's inner circle. This goes deeper than we thought. My shoulder ached, a reminder of battles past. I wasn't just fighting for my team now. I was fighting for the truth, and I'd never felt more ready. A Raleigh dawn broke gray and restless, the air heavy with the promise of rain as I prepared for Operation Iron Pulse. The mission was clear. Stop Michael Crane, secure the stolen Shadowblade code, and neutralize a Yemen-based cyber terror cell planning an attack on U.S. embassies. My shoulder scar from Kabul throbbed, a warning as old as the war itself, but I pushed it aside. The leaked Shadowblade files, AI altered to paint me as a rogue operative, had spread across X, fueling Senator Patricia Holt's campaign to bar women from combat roles. My family's dismissal, calling me a drifter while Mom lay dying, had stung. But Lauren's role in the leak, tied to Vanguard Solutions and her boss, Richard Holt, the senator's brother, was a deeper betrayal. Ethan's silence, knowing about the files, cut even sharper. I stood in my motel room, the neon sign outside flickering like a heartbeat, and checked my secure laptop one last time. Coordinates from Lauren confirmed Crane was in D.C., meeting a contact near the Pentagon. Emma's research had uncovered Vanguard's funding ties to a shadow network pushing disinformation. This wasn't just about me. It was about my team, the civilians we'd saved, and the truth we'd fought for. I packed my gear, the weight of my old Shadowblade bracelet grounding me. Its inscription, Lupus non dormit, the wolf does not sleep, a reminder of who I was. I flew to D.C. that morning, landing under a sky bruised with clouds. Fort Belvoir's ops room buzzed with tension, young analysts and seasoned operatives eyeing me like a relic. Captain Mia Torres, cyber ops lead, met me at the digital map, her dark eyes skeptical. General Morgan, your file's a ghost story. They say you're Shadowblade. That true? I nodded, tapping the map to display Iron Pulse's blueprint, covert drop points, network nodes, chokeholds in Yemen. I wrote the code they're using. I know how to break it. Mia studied me, then smirked. All right, General, let's see it. The plan was sharp. Mia's team would hack the cell's servers remotely, while I led a ground unit to capture Crane and secure the physical hub in Aden. But a new twist hit. Encrypted chatter showed the cell knew our approach, likely fed by Crane's contact, a Vanguard operative named Falcon 1. My phone buzzed with a message from Emma. Found a Vanguard payment to a DC lobbyist linked to Holt. It's big. I forwarded it to Kessler, my CO, who replied, "Get Crane, he's the key." The mission felt like Kabul all over again. Too quiet, too clean, a trap waiting to spring. We landed in Aden under a starless sky, the air thick with salt and diesel. The convoy snaked through war-torn streets, buildings pocked with bullet holes leaning like tired soldiers. My team, 6 operatives, hardened but young, moved silently, my shoulders screaming with every step. Mia's voice crackled in my earpiece. I'm in their servers. They're using your scrambler code, Morgan. It's live. I signaled the team toward the target, a concrete bunker posing as a warehouse. The silence was wrong, too heavy. Then Mia's voice sharpened. It's a decoy. No active nodes. They knew we were coming. Before I could respond, a drone ripped through the night, its fire pinning us in an alley. Ambush, I shouted, launching smoke grenades to cloud its sensors. We scattered, dragging a wounded operative, Sam, whose leg was torn by shrapnel. My shoulder burned, blood seeping into my vest. But I pushed forward, leading the team through a maze of rubble. Inside the bunker, I found Crane, hunched over a laptop, a black case blinking red beside him, a satellite-link explosive, wired with my Shadowblade code. 10 seconds on the timer. I dropped to my knees, fingers trembling as I bypassed the uplink and cut the circuit with 1 second left. Package disabled, I gasped. Mia's voice returned. They're routing through a secondary server. It's Falcon 1, linked to Holt's office. Crane, zip-tied and bleeding, glared at me. You can't stop this, Morgan. It's bigger than you. I leaned close. Watch me. We extracted under fire, Sam slung between us, the desert night alive with chaos. Back at base, Mia confirmed the server trace. Falcon 1 was Richard Holt's chief aide, feeding intel to the Yemen cell to discredit Shadowblade and bolster Patricia Holt's campaign. Emma's next message hit like a grenade. Lauren's testifying. She's got audio of Richard Holt ordering the leak. I called Lauren, her voice shaky but resolute. Abby, I recorded Holt last month, offering me a job to stay quiet. I'm giving it to the Inspector General. I paused, surprised. Why now? She sighed. Because I was wrong about you. And I'm done hiding. Her redemption wasn't for me. It was for her own conscience, but I'd take it. Back in Raleigh, Mom's condition stabilized, and I sat by her hospital bed, her hand stronger in mine. I saw you on X, Abby, she said. Major General, I'm so proud. Tears fell as I squeezed her hand. I thought I'd lost you all. She shook her head. You never lost me. The Pentagon hearing came a week later, a sterile room, heavy with judgment. Senator Holt sat across from me, her eyes cold, but I was ready. I presented the Shadowblade logs, unredacted, showing every call I'd made, like halting a drone strike to save civilians in Syria. Lauren's audio played. Richard Holt's voice, clear and damning, ordering the leak to bury women like Morgan. Emma's evidence followed. Vanguard's financial trail, linking payments to Falcon 1. The room went silent. The Secretary of Defense spoke. General Morgan, your actions in Shadowblade and Iron Pulse were exemplary. Your rank is fully restored, your record cleared. Holt adjusted her glasses, saying nothing. Outside, Ethan waited, his face drawn. Abby, I didn't know how deep this went. I'm sorry. I studied him, the brother who'd chosen silence over support. You didn't ask who I was, I said. Start asking now. He nodded, and for the first time, I saw a crack in his pride. Months later, Raleigh sparkled with winter lights, and I stood on a stage at a Veterans Day ceremony, not in uniform, but as myself. The banner read, honoring Major General Abigail Morgan, Shadowblade, and Operation Iron Pulse. Lauren spoke first, her voice steady. Abby taught me courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's quiet, relentless, and unbreakable. Dad pinned a new medal to my jacket, his hands trembling. I was wrong, Abby. You're the soldier I never was. Mom hugged me, her strength returning. Ethan saluted, then whispered, You were always the stronger one. I took the mic. The crowd hushed. I used to think being unseen was my punishment, I said. But it's not the world that defines you. It's what you carry inside. If they call you a shadow, let them. Shadows prove there's light. The applause was deafening, but the quiet moment came later when a young veteran handed me a folded flag. My sister came home because of you, she said. I took it, my throat tight. Thank you. That night, in a quiet Raleigh apartment I'd rented, I opened my old metal case. The Shadowblade bracelet glinted. Lupus non-dormant etched deep. A message from Mia waited on my phone. We're still out there, Morgan. The wolves don't sleep. I slipped the bracelet on, its weight familiar. Outside, snow dusted the city, and I felt whole, not just a soldier, but Abby Morgan, seen at last. The war wasn't over, but I wasn't fighting alone anymore. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. Thank you for being here.